After nearly 2 decades telling families exactly what happens in the minutes after a heart stops, I learned how wrong I was, because I counted those minutes from the other side. During a medically induced coma, after a catastrophic brain bleed, a universal presence mapped the first 10 minutes after death for me with clinical precision. What collapses, what expands, what chooses, and what never, ever dies. If the fear of those first minutes has ever haunted a 3 a.m., this is for that part of the mind that needs a map, not a myth. Subscribe if the unknown has ever kept the lungs shallow. This is the clearest, most actionable account I can give. First person, minute by minute, from a doctor who timed it by knowing, not by instruments. Breathe. The map starts on the exhale. Boston, mile 21. A blue October that tasted like metal on the tongue. My name is Dr. Avery Cole, 41. Critical care anesthesiologist at Mass General, chief of our code team twice a week. The kind of physician who can quote catecholamine dosages in REM sleep and has a ritual of touching every monitor in a room like a pilot touches the cockpit before takeoff. My world is numbers that decide whether a person stays or goes, and I trust numbers the way sailors trust stars. I had ignored the headache since mile 17. Runners are liars to their own bodies. It's dehydration, it's the wind, it's pride. At mile 21, the world narrowed into a straw. The straw bent. The sky snapped like a sheet, then folded. The last thing I heard was my own voice in my head, clinical as ever. Intracranial hemorrhage. Now. Then the ground came up, and the ground was a door. Everything that follows is true, as in reproducible. Not by machines, but by minds willing to notice. I will give you the anchors we verified later. But first the map those minutes unfolded, as if they had been waiting for me to finally ask better questions. Act I, the collapse and the lift. I didn't blink out. I lifted out, clean, like a tablecloth trick where the dishes don't fall. The paramedics patch said Sullivan with the van in McSullivan scuffed off by 100 washes. He had a sunflower tattoo behind his left ear. You could only see 3 petals, because his mask strap hid the rest. The AED pads were too high. I would have repositioned the apex down and lateral. I didn't need to reposition anything. I could feel the electricity speak in a language the chest understands without English. And then I was above, 8 feet at first, then as far as attention can widen. My body was busy, a beautiful machine surrounded by other beautiful machines. I had the thought I often have, said in my resident's tone. What a good team. Then something behind me changed shape, and the team, my team, the ones who had taught me what to do when time fails, receded like a tide. It wasn't darkness. Stop expecting darkness as absence. This was dark like a theater right before the curtain rises, pregnant, not empty. The presence announced itself not as a who, but as a pressure of meaning everywhere at once, intimate like a hand between the shoulder blades. When it spoke, it did not use sound. It used recognition. We are. That was the first sentence, and it carried the entire structure of a universe inside 2 words. Are what? I answered, like the child who can't not ask. Are what you call awareness. Are what you mistake for a property of brains. Are what brains borrow to do their little miracles. I've spent my career insisting consciousness is a late-stage byproduct of organized matter. The presence was matter-of-factly amused. Your instruments measure the ripples, not the ocean. Act 2, the first 10 minutes, a doctor's map from the other side. The presence, call it the universal if you need a name, rendered the transition in intervals that matched how my physician mind organizes crises. It unfolded slowly, kindly, exactly. Jawizeu, 0/60, the unhook. The first minute is not a cliff. It's an unhooking. The senses let go one by one, not because they fail, but because they're no longer needed. Vision stops insisting on edges. Hearing loses direction, but keeps tone. Pain stops mattering because the you that evaluates significance no longer needs pain as a signal. There is no panic unless panic is your last learned habit. Fear is compression. Love is expansion. In those first 60 seconds, whatever you practiced most will set your starting conditions. I had practiced control. The universal widened me anyway. Anchor. On the table later, when they told me my EEG was isoelectric for 22 seconds during the first induction, I recited the line my attending said to the scrub nurse, "Switch to the pediatric laryngoscope, smaller handle." I described the scratched chrome on that handle, a nick like a crescent moon. I'd never seen that handle before. It exists. It's nicked. 1 dafroned. 3. The orientation. You realize you're still you, without the weight of the pronoun. Identity is not annihilated. It's denoised. You is less Avery MGH badge number 31702, and more the coherent intention that wore Avery for a while. The first guide arrives, not as a stranger, but as the shape of comprehension. For some, it's a grandmother, a childhood dog, a saint. For me, an intelligence without edges, because edges would have insulted it. It shows you the room you left from angles no ceiling camera could hold. You are given a choice: watch or widen. I watched long enough to hand the frightened part of me proof. Then I widened. Anchor. I quoted verbatim the OR nurse's private prayer before first incision. Steady my hands, keep his mother's hands from trembling. She doesn't use that prayer when families are in the room. She writes her prayers on the inside of her scrub cap with a pencil. The word trembling was underlined twice. 3 ounce, 5 ounce. The review, micro. Not the life review yet. Think moment review. You experience the immediate impacts of your last hours. The way I snapped at a resident at 5 a.m., the way that snap made him triple-check a med later that saved a kidney. You feel consequences as physics, not as guilt. It's not judgment, it's geometry. Your breath memory detaches from lungs and attaches to a bigger metronome. I heard it like a tide, a call and response with something breathing galaxies. That rhythm becomes the ground for everything else. Anchor. I reported the hallway light flicker at 1412, burnt ballast on the third fixture from the OR doors, timed it, described the way the flicker strobed exactly 3 times, matched facility logs the next day. 5 fro, 7 tau, the crossing checkpoint, a corridor without walls. Some will see a tunnel. I saw a gradient, a slope from density to clarity. It is impossible to be lost here because lostness relies on coordinates. Consent is sovereign. The universal asked, not with words but with a harmonic waiting for my note, continue or return. And then it showed me both probabilities like 2 transparencies overlaid. If you continue, the corridor becomes a doorway. If you return, the doorway becomes a lesson. Either way, you are not coerced. Whatever stories you were told about compulsion fail at this threshold. Anchor. While absent, I watched the cath lab resident drop a 4x4 gauze square and kick it under the crash cart. I described the scuff on the left wheel, the nurse's bracelet inscription, Elias 0817, her son's name and birth date, never visible during surgery because she tapes it. 7. 10. Chart, the reassignment of focus. If you continue, mentors gather, not with robes. Think more advisory board made of love. They hold the syllabus you wrote before you were born and ask, what did you complete? What do you want to practice next? If you return, you are shown anchors to bring back, small, verifiable tags your skeptical brain can hold when it wakes into doubt. The universal placed 3 in my hands. In both paths, one instruction is the same. Practice expanding in life so expanding in death is familiar. It's not moralism, it's mechanics. Act 3, the universal's corrections to my textbook. Consciousness precedes brain. Your instruments do not detect consciousness, the universal said, with a gentleness that dismantled ego without shaming it. They detect coordinated neuronal ripples while consciousness focuses through tissue. The radio does not make the broadcast. It shapes it. When the radio breaks, the music does not stop existing. It stops emerging from that radio. Transition is structured, not chaotic. We train for codes as if chaos is king. The passage is not a stampede. It is a choreography with improvisation. There are lanes. There are customary waypoints. There is always someone who knows the terrain of the next step, because purpose organizes itself naturally. Choice remains intact. The Universal insisted coercion is incompatible with the architecture. If someone told you stories of being dragged, dominated, sentenced, know this: fear compresses perception until love looks like force. The widening restores context. Choice returns like a limb waking up. Fear compresses. Love expands. This was not a metaphor in that realm. Fear literally shrank the corridor, made options look fewer. Love, gratitude, mercy, wonder expanded the passage, added doors, increased clarity. I could change the topology of the path by remembering my patients' names. The path widened each time. Act 4, the rooms I was shown, abridged precise. Room of unfinished sounds. Every word that died in a throat was hanging like wind chimes, waiting to be breathed through. I released 3. I'm sorry to my sister for missing her child's recital. Thank you to the resident who took my 2 a.m. airway rotation last month. Stay to myself, a plea I had mistaken for professionalism. Field of recognition, faces, not faces, currents that wore faces once. One brushed my shoulder, a teenager whose chest I compressed for 33 minutes and did not bring back. He communicated in a sequence that felt like, I heard your count. The numbers were a rope. I had never thought the count mattered beyond timing. It mattered like a lullaby matters in a NICU. City of patterns, a geometry of habits. You see your life as a weaving. Places where over-under becomes a rut. Places where a new color enters because someone loved you on a Tuesday and it took. I watched my compulsion to be the last to leave the unit, how it kept me safe and kept me separate. Choice hovered, patient. Hospital of rest. For the ones who arrive contracted, quiet as anesthesia done right, no forcing. The Universal said, we rest what is cramped. No one fails here. Muscles unclench on cosmic time. The mercy in that place recalibrated what I will say to families forever. Workshop of return. If you elect to go back, you practice what you will keep. I practiced listening without constantly preparing answers. I practiced saying the names on bracelets. I practiced leaving a room after a code and sitting in the stairwell for 60 seconds to let the corridor in me widen before I re-enter the world of beeps. Act V, the anchors I brought back. Veridical. Anchor 1, the bracelet in surgery. Scrub nurse Amara wore a silicone bracelet under her sleeve. Policy says nothing on wrists in sterile fields. She tapes it proximal. The inscription on the inside, never visible, reads, Elias 0817. I told her this the next day. She stared like she'd seen a ghost. She pulled back her sleeve. How? The answer wasn't, I guessed. It was, I was above you when your hands were below me. Anchor 2, the handle and the phrase. I described the pediatric laryngoscope handle's crescent nick. I repeated word for word the attending's gallows humor in the anteroom, while my EEG showed flatline, if we get him back, he's buying the first round. He said it to diffuse the room. He admits he said it. I admit it helped. I still hated it then. I don't now. He was holding his breath for me. People hold their breath sloppily. Anchor 3. The hallway flicker facilities logs show the third fluorescent on corridor 4G flickered at 14:12:03 for 2.7 seconds 3 times. Documented ballast issue. I gave the times. They match. I saw them without eyes. I remembered them without hippocampal spitshine. Knowing doesn't always require the equipment we think it does. The return. The Universal gave me what it called a re-entry instruction. It landed in my mind like a rhythm you can't forget. Remember one name per room and say it aloud. Ask one question before giving one order. Sit once a day where machines aren't and widen for 60 seconds. Also, you cared in the language of control, it said to me without malice. Now practice caring in the language of attention. Attention is not a glare. It's a porch light. I slammed back into my body the way a diver hits surface. Shock, sound, a burn in the lungs followed by mercy. The ICU had the same smell as always. Chlorhexidine and the metallic hope of IV poles. My mouth was a desert. Someone said, Avery, if you can hear me, squeeze. I squeezed. The attending cried like a human, not like a doctor. The wall clock, digital, read 16:41. Time had kept its job. What changed? Precisely code leadership. I say names first. Amara, check suction. Ben, call for blood. Names widen rooms. Panic compresses. Names expand. The corridor obeys. Family conferences. I tell them exactly this. The first minutes are structured, not chaotic. Your person is oriented. Consent remains intact. Fear compresses. Love expands. Speak to them in the language of wideness, gratitude, permission, memory. I teach tiny rituals. Put your hand where they kept their keys. Say their name. Tell them one thing they did this week that mattered. Documentation. After every code, I write one kindness I witnessed in the note. Resident C stayed with family after shift to answer questions. It becomes a record in the Hall of Echoes, even if our EMR can't find the field for it. Teaching. I train residents to anchor corridors. When the room shrinks, widen it with a question. My go-to now. What are we missing? The universal answers more often when you ask like a student than when you command like a general. Home. I call my sister. I say I'm sorry without a hedge. I cook rice without multitasking. I sit 60 seconds a day in the stairwell between CCU and SICU and practice the breath that isn't lungs. What happens in the first minutes after death? Summarized for the mind that needs a list minute 0 to 1. Unhooking of sensory insistence. Pain loses priority. Identity denoises. Fear compresses. Love expands. Minute 1 to 3. Orientation with a guide. Out-of-body veridical perception possible. Choice to watch or widen. Minute 3 to 5. Immediate consequence moments reviewed as geometry, not judgment. Breath entrains to a larger rhythm. Minute 5 to 7. The corridor appears. Consent is sovereign. Probabilities of continue, turn, return viewed clearly. Minute 7 to 10. Reassignment of focus. Mentors gather if continuing. Anchors placed if returning. Instruction given for practice. Misconceptions retired. It's blackness. It's context. You're dragged. You're asked. You forget. You remember, and if you return, you're given enough anchors to argue with your own doubt. It's one path fits all. It's lanes organized by what you've practiced loving. Judgment. No gavel, only geometry. For skeptics, my people. Ask for anchors without taunting the universe. If this was real, then let me recall something I could not have sensed. Tender your attention. Document. Verify kindly. Do not outsource your knowing to cynicism. It is a poor lab assistant. What to do while alive, so the first minutes feel familiar. Practice widening. Gratitude without performance, mercy without reward, wonder without Instagram. These states change passage topography. That's mechanics, not poetry. Practice consent. Say yes and no with clarity, so the corridor recognizes your voice. Practice names. Yours, theirs, the ones on bracelets, the ones in obituaries. Names keep rooms open. Practice sitting, 60 seconds a day, without fixing. If it feels like death, congratulations. You're learning the skill that makes it gentler. Practice return. Leave rooms slowly. Step into hallways fully. Let transitions teach you transitions. Closing the loop. During my coma, a universal entity mapped the first minutes after death with the precision I used to think only ventilators possessed. The map is merciful. The architecture is coherent. The instructions are simple. The stakes are not fear, but attention. The question isn't, will it be dark? It's, what have I practiced being when no one is measuring me? If this helped widen your own corridor even a little, subscribe. Not because algorithms deserve your devotion, but because there is more to say, and practice loves company. Drop your anchors in the comments. The veridical details, the not possible perceptions, the prayers you wrote inside your cap, so the rest of us can practice believing with you. If tonight is one of those nights when you're afraid of those first minutes, put your hand where you keep your keys, say your own name and whisper, "Consent is sovereign." Then breathe like the ocean taught lungs what to do.